Two guys and a mic. How are you? It is episode, what are we, six? Six.
Yep.
And
six.
We're breaking out our first guest. This is going to be a lot of fun. We got to welcome to the show, Rick Stone.
Yes, hello, everybody.
Rick Stone joins us.
Thank you.
Nobody knows who Rick Stone is, but we're about to explain who he is.
He's got about 6 followers on Instagram, so that's where the 6 comes in, I think. But it's 5 more than I had yesterday, so I'm working on it.
And it's 6 more than I have, so there you go. You beat me already.
Okay.
Well, Rick, we wanted to bring you in because, this is called Two Guys and a Mic, and it's about our time in the radio
Can I
and
stop
record
you for
label.
a second there, Jim, for one
Sure.
second? Two guys and a mic, but I see 2 guys and I see 2 mics. So can we explain that a little bit?
You know what? We're going to get into semantics here, but we just wanted to come up with a catchy name. We wanted to come up with a catchy name, and that's what we went with.
2 mics, 2 guys. Not
yeah.
so good. Okay. All right.
So we just did 2 guys and a mic.
2 guys, 2 mics, and Rick.
Okay.
So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and the comment section's on. We'd love to hear from you, especially when we do our top 5 list. Mark, remember we did top 5 albums, our top 5 favorite albums? People can sound off about these top 5 lists, and maybe we'll share them, in subsequent episodes. So that'll be a lot of fun. And make sure, you subscribe, hit the bell so you get a notification when you can hear the next one. Of these podcasts. We try to post them weekly. Rick is joining us because, Rick, you were Mark's first boss when he went over to the promotion side of the record label business.
From the mailroom.
What were you thinking when you hired him?
I was not thinking, obviously. I was thinking about it, actually, knowing that we were going to speak today, and I can't even recall if I interviewed Mark. So,
you did.
Mark, maybe you recall how you wound up on the other side of floor 32?
Well, I think in previous episodes we spoke about my major beginnings in the mailroom, and obviously I remembered all the departments and bringing everybody mail and stuff, and we talked about how on my messenger trips I would always try to get the shortest trip, and we had other people in the mailroom that would go on the longer ones, but I explained about the one I used to go to Sting all the time at the hotel, which I won't mention in case he still stays there. But I mentioned that he would open the door like an inch. He'd stick his hand out. I'd hand him a package and he'd slam the door. I said, boy, I'm in showbiz now. Look at me interacting with Sting. But I also mentioned that I got to speak to Bryan Adams a bit. I really liked him. And I mentioned that I had asked him, which is the question everybody always asks him, is how did you name the song, or why did you name the song Summer of '69? And I remember him saying, what do you think? And we laughed about it. And the other artist interaction I had was Jeffrey Osborne had come up to the main lobby and he was showing us these shoes that he bought. And I was thinking to myself, those shoes probably cost more than I make in a month. But ironically, after I left A&M and then eventually I worked at Arista, the first #1 record I worked was with Jeffrey Osborne and Dionne Warwick, Love Power. So that was kind of interesting how that worked out.
Fate would have it.
But to answer your question, I believe you interviewed me. I think John Brown interviewed me and Al Cafaro interviewed me. I guess there was some kind of inter-office posting of the job. I don't know who else was going to go for it, but...
Well, everybody was going to share you because we didn't have enough money to pay for 3 people at the time. So that's really what it was going to be.
And I don't think that's changed in the business either.
Yeah, and I think the other 2 guys, didn't want to hire you, and I did, and I overrode them. So I think that's really what happened.
But I think the guy that had the job before me was your boy, Chuck Blizziotis. And I was always jealous because I knew you were much tighter with him than I think you were with me. But
oh, come on.
I felt bad.
Come on. All you guys have to do is have the coffee ready for me when I came in at 9:30. That's all. That was the requisite for the job. Everything else was you'd learn and,
But it was interesting because I did give you props on a previous podcast that I said I learned my promotional work ethic from you because you would call people all day long. And my job was to get the one guy on the phone while you were talking to the other guy. And you went through call after call after call.
Well, that's what we did. And to answer the original question about hiring Mark, I knew Mark could do radio promotion, and I always wanted to hire an assistant that wouldn't stay with me long, that would be part of the staff. That's the way I looked at it. And most of the people that I did hire in that period of time wound up doing radio promotion, or certainly went on to a greater career path, but started as my assistant or in the promotion department, which is a great way to start because you learn the business pretty quickly.
Well,
it
Rick,
was a
you
great
also
experience.
you got your start in radio though, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Where'd you crack the mic again?
WAAL in Binghamton, New York, which the original call letters when I worked there was WKOP FM. I went to school in Binghamton at the State University there. And after, spending a lot of my young youth watching baseball games and playing stickball and all that and idolizing Mickey Mantle, the other side of my passion was music and hearing the top 40 jocks on the AM stations back then. When I should have been sleeping, I was listening to WKBW in Buffalo, or WLS in Chicago, or WOWO in Fort Wayne, Indiana, or WTRY in Albany. You could get these stations, at night, as you guys know, especially in the wintertime. And they didn't sound like the New York stations that I was listening to. But in short, I learned about the music then, and I loved the jocks. And the disc jockeys were my heroes. And the first thing I did when I went to school was I walked over to the campus radio station and signed up to audition for them to get on the air and do a show.
And did you get on?
It took me a while to get on because I think they thought I sucked. But the reason really was that my orientation at the time was to be more of a top 40 personality jock.
Right.
And the radio station, as all college radio, I believe back then, 1968, was really caught up in the alternative druggy culture. Not that they were all on drugs, but it was the Grateful Dead, it was Hendrix, it was Janis Joplin, it was Jefferson Airplane, and it was soft voice jocks, male and female, who would come on and just play music and not really have any disc jockey personality. I mean, I worked at a radio station there, WHRW FM, which is still there and bigger than ever now, I'm happy to say, where the time clock was behind the announcer. So I don't think they really cared about what time it was.
Right.
So that segued into a couple of years later at one of the local stations. I had a job opportunity to do top 40 radio. Oh, by the way, they did let me on the radio station, and I did do the format I wanted to do. And then I did it with another gentleman, and we did a Friday morning radio show. And it was the most popular show on campus at the time. And that segued into, in my junior year, doing top 40 radio at WKOP FM, 36 hours a week. I was not doing too well in school, but I was doing great on the air.
And what shift were you doing?
I was doing nights, 7 p.m. to 1 a.m.
The flame-throwing night guy.
Yeah, and loving it. And oddly enough, the first song I played in commercial radio was an A&M song. Do you know what I mean by Lee Michaels? Which is
wow.
a big hit in 1971.
Interesting.
It's Two Guys and a Mic. We're here with Rick Stone, who was Mark's first promotional boss at A&M Records. He's our guest. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell for new notifications and comments and all that. It helps us and will help the channel grow. Rick, when did you make the transition from radio to the record label side?
Well, in 74, the radio station had undergone an ownership change, became WAAL, had morphed into a album format, but very commercial and with a pretty tight clock, sort of a WPLJ, for those of you who grew up in New York. And I had become a little disenchanted with radio at the time. It was more me than anything else. I think it was, looking back, I was a little immature about it. I was a little impatient. I thought I was going to segue, honestly, from Binghamton to a big major market. And I had some other job opportunities, one of them being in Rochester at WCMF part-time, which I turned down, which was a mistake looking back. But that was part of the maturity level that I had to achieve in growing up. And I realized that, the music part was really stronger to me than the radio part. But they made the decision for me because they fired me. If you want to know how the transition went. And I was fired because a friend of mine who had worked there, who was actually my roommate at the time, he got fired for having a personality conflict with somebody 2 months prior, and I let him in the building at night to do an air check so he could get another job. And somebody saw me let him in, and they called me out on the carpet the next day, and they let me go. So
Wow.
that's how that worked.
And
But there was a transition, guys, from leaving radio to not knowing how to get into the other side, the music end, the record labels, the music business. And I called up the people that I knew at the time, which, wasn't that extensive because very few people wanted to, very few people wanted to hang out in Binghamton until we got the Broome County Arena in 1974, which was the last year I was jockeying there. And, I had some relationships with people, especially in New York City. And I called them up and I said, hey, I want to get on the other side of this. I want to get on your side. What do I do? And I started walking the streets, and it took probably 2 years.
now you
What'd you
didn't
do for
start in
those
the
2
mailroom
years?
like Mark, right?
No, 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 no. I went to one of those "You Too Can Be a DJ" schools and taught
Oh,
how kids how to run a board. I talked my way into writing artist bios for Columbia Records because I had a friend who worked at CBS and they posted it on the board. They were looking for a national director of publicity, which I was totally unqualified for, but I tried out for it anyway. And the woman who told me I didn't get the job was very nice and said, look, the new person we're hiring is going to need help. He's going to need some outsourced people to help him write bios and stuff like that. You should call him. And I started doing that. And gradually I just piecemealed together a way to survive. And, through a connection, through a family friend, the A&M position was opening up. And I got the opportunity to interview for it. And they interviewed me twice before they told me I got the job. And, that was in October, November of 1976.
which is interesting because you didn't go like the local promotion route or the national. You just pretty much jumped into being the head, right?
Well, yeah, a little bit like that in promotion, but that wasn't my first job at A&M. My first job was what they called local marketing coordinator. See, at the time, the label had just had Frampton Comes Alive, so on their way to selling 20 million albums. So they were expanding the staff at A&M to put more people at their independent distributors and more people to go into the stores to make sure that the record stores were stocking our artists properly in the right section and making sure we could merchandise those albums so that they would sell through and wouldn't come back to us as returns. So that job was very unglamorous. I was, it was not, it was working at a distributor, and then I'd work at the A&M office 2 days a week at 595 Madison. And I learned a lot. I had a retail background already because during college I worked at Sam Goody, which was the major retailer in the New York City area. So, I kind of knew about that stuff. So that's how it worked in. And it was only 18 months into the working on the retail side for this in the A&M sales department that they asked me if I was interested in trying out for the job as local promotion director for New York.
Who was the person that asked you to do that?
Michael Leon.
Uh-huh.
Was,
I know Michael.
And he came from Arista, Mark, so you know that.
Wow. No, I didn't know he was at Arista,
Yeah,
but
he came from Arista. Michael, I worked hand in hand with because so much of New York radio at the time, especially WABC, was about store reports. And if you didn't have your record humming in the stores, there was no SoundScan back then. So it was all based on relationships. So if you didn't have your record, if you didn't have the retail stores telling the radio stations what was selling, and if they weren't pitching your song to the radio stations, you were handicapped in convincing them that that they should play your record. And our artists started to show up in reports. Record World picked up some reports of the songs that Michael was promoting to the radio stations, and WABC was telling him that the song was turning up in store reports, of what we were promoting to them. So, Michael saw in me a really great partner, promotion and sales, which is the only way to do it back then. Promotion and sales have to be aligned or you're not going to be successful. So that's how, Michael moved on to a job in LA for the company. And one day he took me aside and said, look, I'm going to be moving out to LA. This job's going to open up and you should take it. And I went, me? And he said, yeah. He said, you can do it. He said, you grew up here, you know the radio stations, you know the retail stores. He says, I'll give you the 5 restaurants to entertain people and I'll show you the wine list. Said, okay. So I was interviewed for it by Harold Childs, my first radio promotion boss, a dear man and a brilliant radio promotion executive. And it was a short interview. He and Harold, we just did a memorial for Harold. We lost him last year. And we did a memorial for him that over 100 people showed up in April. And everybody, there was a real consensus that Harold had an ability to see in people the potential that you perhaps didn't see in yourself at the time. And looking back, I said, why would he hire me, who had no experience in radio promotion, to start in New York City of all places? When he could have hired the Columbia person or the Atlantic person or the Warner person, but he didn't, and he hired me, and forever grateful that he did that.
I'd like to ask, who was the hardest program director you ever had to work to get a record on?
All of them.
That hasn't changed, by the way.
No name calling.
Some things have changed, like having
all of them. Well, you want names?
Yeah, why not?
Sure. Okay.
By the way, it's 2 guys and a mic. Rick Stone is our special guest. He is a label veteran. He was Mark's first boss at A&M Records, and now he'll spill some names. Allegedly. We've mastered that word, allegedly, so we don't get sued.
Steve Kingston was no day at the beach.
Yeah.
But I respected the shit out of him.
Yeah.
And he ran a great radio station, B104 in Baltimore, and then Z100 in New York, when I was dealing with him. He was fair, but he was tough. He was never on time for dinners. And
he's such a laid-back, mellow guy now that he's not.
Now he wasn't then.
No.
And Mark alluded to earlier, the phone. That's how we lived. And there was, when I knew that we were up for a song at Z100, I would start calling Steve at like 5:30 p.m. and they would keep me on hold for 45 minutes because that's when he would take some calls from people he had relationships with. And I held for 45 minutes. And then he'd come on, he used to call me Silverstein, which is my real last name, and I used to call him his real last name. So he'd go, all right, Silverstein, give me the best 2 minutes of your life because I don't got a lot of time. And it was always like that, but he knew what the real hits were. And I knew he knew that. And you couldn't bullshit him. And he was tough, but he was fair and he was a great partner. And top shelf programmer, I thought.
Can you share with us what it was like to work with legendary Charlie Miner?
Charlie came along in my life after Harold moved into another executive position at the company, and that was in 1980. I had already had a couple of years under my belt being the New York local promotion director. Charlie came in, and Charlie was, I think, the greatest radio promotion senior vice president ever. Certainly of his time. I think, of course, if you worked at Atlantic, you thought it was this person. Or if you thought you worked at Columbia, you thought it might be Donnie Einer or somebody, Of course, I'm prejudiced when it comes to Charlie, but Charlie worked hard, lived hard, he played hard. Everything meshed together with him. His entire life was was tied to his business. But I learned promotion from him, and I learned how to work people. And I also learned some of the things that I didn't want to do because he was a player.
There's some legendary stories, aren't there?
Yeah, he had this innate ability to work a room like no other. And when he talked to you in a room of 200, he made you feel like you were the only one he was talking to, and he made you feel special. And that's a big gift. And he was funny. He was to the point. He was a hard player, and it was just about getting the wins. I don't think we ever talked about how great a song was. He wasn't on the music side of, boy, Charlie, have you heard that song by Sting, or have you heard that song by the Human League, or by Janet or Brian? Charlie was just like, you know what we got to do? We got to put that damn record on the radio. Let's go. Let's go. And I worked with him for 10 years. And I'll tell you a few stories. And because I worked in New York, and he was in LA, with the time difference, I sort of was his wake up call. At 9:30 a.m., I'd be calling his house, and I could tell what kind of night he had previously by how he'd answer the phone. And if he'd answer the phone, hey, Stoney, what's going on? Or if he'd answer the phone, hello, I knew something was up. So sometimes when it was the latter, and he had a rough night the night before, and the rough night meaning he was playing, he was out, with a lot of people, I'd say, okay, I tell him, give him a couple of things that were happening with the staff, or if we had an ad or two. And then 17, 20 minutes later, he would call me back, and he'd say, all right, put these down. And he'd reel off about 25 call letters of ads he just got. And it was like he had a blood transfusion. And and you never thought of what 20 minutes ago, he sounded like he wasn't going to get up today.
Right.
But Charlie was a really gifted executive. You never had dinner with just him. He'd say, come on, have dinner with me tonight. Meet me over here. Meet me at Le Dome. And then you go over to Le Dome, and they'd be, oh, I'm having dinner with Charlie Miner. And they'd seat you down at the table with 50 seats. There'd be 50 people there.
Wow.
And they go, what are you? Well, we're all having dinner with Charlie. He was a master at that. There was also a time when he would send you home if he saw you yawning.
Oh, really?
Yeah. This happened to me once, and I believe it was Steve Resnick, who works at Ramp.
Yeah.
We were at dinner once with Charlie with his whole entourage. He was the original Entourage guy. You know what Entourage is like on HBO. Mm-hmm. He's the original guy. He's the Entourage of radio promotion. But and we never had dinner at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. in LA, and it was always 9 or 10, which is in LA, that's kind of late.
Yeah.
So 11 or 12 rolled around. Charlie would be first kicking into second gear. I'd be getting tired. Some people might be getting tired. If you yawned, he'd go, you, go home. He'd point to you at the table, embarrass the shit out of you. Go home. Oof. And that happened to me once, and I think it happened to Rez. So you had to sort of know when to leave and when not to leave.
And sadly, for those that are watching us don't know, Charlie ended up being murdered.
Yes.
By well, I guess it was his girlfriend at the time, right?
It was his former girlfriend.
Okay.
And my understanding is he had broken off with her, but she did not accept that, and she was waiting for him in his house. Yeah, and I had spoken to Charlie 5 days earlier, and we were supposed to get together. He never thought I would move to LA. He always thought I was the consummate New Yorker who would live and die in New York. And when I told him, that I was moving to LA when I did move, he laughed out loud and said, you got to be kidding me. He goes, you don't like LA. You're never going to move here. And, Charlie, I don't think, really loved, let me just say, Charlie and I, we were very different, but it worked. Mm-hmm. And we had great respect and love for each other. There was one night when he was smashed and couldn't drive home, so I had to drive his Rolls Royce home out of Le Dome. and the restaurant, and I had to make a left turn on Sunset Boulevard at 12 midnight when it was crazy out there with cars. And I was scared to death to drive his Rolls Royce, number one. I had never driven a Rolls Royce before. And he was pretty out there, and he was very impatient. So I had the left blinkers on, and I'm waiting. I still can't turn. He goes, come on, turn the car. He goes, what is it with you? Turn the car. And he goes, then he starts going, Stoney can't make a left. And he starts like, really embarrassing me. I finally made the left and got him home. About a week later, I was still in LA. I was with him again. And I noticed he was driving this time, and I noticed that his gas meter was on E. Okay. I said, Charlie, you need gas. He goes, what do you mean? I said, your gas meter's on E. And he said, that thing's broken. Don't pay attention to that. There's nothing wrong with it. I said, okay. This was on a Monday night. Tuesday morning rolled around. I went to the office, called Charlie. Charlie who said, yeah, I'm on my way. Called him in his house. 2 hours went by. No Charlie. I said to Charlie's assistant, I said, Andrea Polini, I said, where's Charlie? She goes, that's odd. He's not here. He's usually here by now. We called him on his car phone. Sure enough, Charlie, what's up? He goes, God damn. He goes, I ran out of gas. But okay. Of course, I didn't mention that again. He came in 2 hours later.
Yeah.
But Rick,
class act.
But Rick, I had heard that A&M, did they buy him the Rolls Royce?
They didn't buy me one, so I don't know. Maybe.
I think I had heard they did, but
Charlie had lots of stuff going on. He knew how to manage things very, very well for himself. And I'll tell you one more story with Charlie, the vacation story. When I started working for him, he was the staff didn't know, we had heard what he was about, but most of the staff didn't know him. I was the national singles director then, no longer out of New York. And Charlie had me flying around to different markets. Most of them are the ones he never wanted to go to: Cleveland, Buffalo, Cincinnati, St. Louis. Charlie liked to go to the markets where he could have a lot of fun, and I understood that. But that's, it was fine for me. Anyway, I wanted to take a vacation during the summer with my wife, and I said, Charlie, I want to take a vacation. He goes, well, you don't want to do that now. I said, to take it in December when there's no radio, when it's closed down, for the holidays. I said, well, that's not a vacation. I want to take a vacation during the summer. I want to take 1 week. He goes, oh, all right. You got to take your vacation. He goes, so leave Tuesday night and come back on following Monday morning. I said, leave Tuesday night. That's not a vacation. That vacation is Monday through Friday.
Right.
He goes, no. Leave Tuesday night. After radio's closed, after we get our ads, leave Tuesday night. So finally he gave me my way because I stood up to him. We went to this Mohonk Mountain Lodge in New Paltz, New York, about 100 miles north of New York. It's really lovely. It's July, summer, all that. Monday rolls around. I'm there. There's one phone booth in the entire mountain lodge. Back then we had phone cards.
Yeah.
So we punch everything in. So I made the mistake of checking in with him to see how we were doing.
Oh boy.
The ads. And he picked up the phone and he goes, I go, Charlie, how are we doing today? He goes, terrible. They said, what do you mean? He goes, we don't have an ad on the board. He said, I need your help. Can you call? And he starts running down stations he wants me to call. So for the next about hour to 90 minutes, I was in the phone booth calling radio stations on my vacation.
That probably didn't go over well with the family.
No, my wife was not too happy about that, but
yeah,
she was a trooper, so she kind of understood. I'm using the word kind of very liberally.
Yeah, I know. I know that situation.
Anyway,
works in radio that way too.
Yeah. So, I can't say enough great things about Charlie. I was blessed to know him, and I really was hoping that we were going to take our friendship to another level now that I was going to be in LA. And then he was
Sad.
murdered the following March when I finally got there. So,
Wow.
But I
bummer.
wanted to add that when I was at the front desk and from the mail room to the receptionist, when Charlie came into town, it was like a superstar. The phones lit up, things were crazy. I was taking messages, and then he'd walk in with clothes that he had. I mean, he was a star. He smelled like a star. He looked like a star. He dressed like a star. He acted like a star. And there was an aura about him,
Oh
as
yeah,
you said, that you don't see in just your average person.
and he knew everybody. When you lost
Everybody.
your job, the first call you made was to Charlie Miner, because he would set you up. He go, I know who to call for you. I mean, I saw it at his house on a Sunday afternoon. His phones on Sunday afternoon, programmers calling him, people who had lost their jobs, who were transitioning or weren't happy with their current job and needed a little insight into what might be available to them. Everybody called Charlie because he knew
Hmm.
everybody, and he was
Amazing.
so willing to help everybody.
And that's
So
a talent and a gift. Not many people have
pretty
that.
amazing.
Yep.
Yep.
Two Guys and a Mic is our podcast. Rick Stone, who was the Mark's first boss in the when he escaped the mailroom at A&M Records, longtime record promotion executive, started in radio. We do a top 5 thing here weekly. We take a subject and then Mark and I contribute and say, what our top 5 favorite one-hit wonders were, favorite albums. What we wanted you to do this week, Rick, was to run down your list of top 5 favorite
Assistants. Top
projects.
5 assistants. That was the list we had to go.
Your favorite
Mark was a
top 5
project.
projects at A&M Records.
Well, I'd have to say that, I'm not going to. They all have different levels of meaning for me for different reasons. Certainly the Police and more, and then Sting's career after, because I was there at the first Police show, the second Police show in the United States, but the first one in New York at CBGB's when we were first starting with the band, and because I spent so much time with them over the years, we did a lot of radio shows back then for radio stations, and because of how the band developed from the grassroots and blew up, and then Sting's career has been phenomenal beyond, and I have so much respect and love for those guys and for Sting, so he'd have to certainly be up there, and Bryan Adams also, because it wasn't easy with Bryan. It wasn't easy with Police either. I mean, we used to have this thing at A&M with some of the staff, where we'd have this A&M should have been hits series, and we picked songs that we thought should have been hits, and then they weren't. And Message in a Bottle by the Police was in there, and songs like I Got You by Split Enz was in there, because we just could not understand how those songs were not hits at radio. And back to Bryan Adams, probably could be the nicest guy in the business, an artist that is just so phenomenally talented and great to be around, and just at the top of his game. Every time I go to Europe, I hear Bryan Adams, everywhere, and I hear Sting everywhere, and it just makes me feel so good, because these guys are worldwide stars. To this
You
day.
say Message in a Bottle wasn't the top 40 hit it should have been, or when it came out, but it still gets so much airplay on rock radio.
Oh yeah.
It's one of those album tracks that I think everybody, once it comes on, everybody goes, "Oh yeah, this was a hit."
Right. That project was very close to me. And back also, I must mention Squeeze and Argy Bargy, which was the band's third album and their breakthrough album. I was in New York at the time, and the New York office, we took especially great pride in Squeeze, because the band, the success came out of New York. We did over 100,000 albums just in the New York City area on Argy Bargy. And WABC used to do, besides their survey, they used to print out, as you guys know, the top 10 albums that they would, pick up. And Argy Bargy made the top 10 on WABC's list.
Is that Tempted was on that album? Was Tempted on?
No, Tempted was later. There
Okay.
were no hits on that album. It was all album play.
Okay.
But it was, every station in the New York City area, Long Island, Westchester, Connecticut, they play the hell out of Argy Bargy, all the tracks. And, you know, the band, that record eventually went gold, and it set the stage for Tempted. It set the stage for other songs that they had later on, and a long career for those guys, you know, Chris Difford and Glenn Tilbrook, especially the primary writers and singers, great guys. I spent a lot of time with them. I saw them a couple of years ago play out here, and they didn't know that I was here, and they were at the merchandising tables, you know, signing stuff. And I went over to Chris Difford and I said, "Hey, Rick Stone," and he jumped out of his seat and gave me this big hug. And you have no idea how that makes somebody like me feel after all these years, to see that they, you know, and then they did a big tour with Hall and Oates recently. I'm so proud of those guys, and that's, you know, I know I just there to do the job, but the benefits of doing the job are seeing that your songs live on for many, many years, and these artists have long careers. So they would be in there. Janet Jackson, of course, you know, which was a phenomenal run. I mean, we broke Janet on her third album. A lot of people don't realize that she had 2 albums previously, and it was only when we, you know, hooked up with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis that the magic started. And, you know, after Control was Rhythm Nation in 1814, which I always felt was one of the greatest albums we ever released. I mean, it set the record for 7 top 5 singles on one album. And the videos and everything about Janet was spectacular. She'd really come into her own, and it was a big superstar time. So that, I have to mention that, because that's a huge team effort, that where it just all came together, and we didn't look back after that.
How about Joe Jackson stepping out? I remember that being big when I was there.
Stepping out, but the first Joe Jackson was Look Sharp, which was an
Right.
album that immediately everybody loved, that I was playing it for WNEW, LAR, BAB, WPIX FM, which, you know, albums were spot on for us, Look Sharp and I'm the Man. So he would be in there too. Jeffrey Osborne, who had an amazing voice and did some great songs for us, came out of the band LTD that had hits for us. And I got to mention Sheryl Crow, because this is an artist that at that time I was head of promotion at A&M in my reign, you know, in the first year in 1991, was a year that anybody who ever did this job, my job, would have loved the music that I had, the potential of that music, because it was so set up, and I didn't realize that, but it, you know, between Amy Grant and Extreme and Bryan Adams, and Aaron Neville and CeCe Peniston, we had we had number ones everywhere. And then Sheryl Crow came along in '94, actually in '93, with her
Tuesday
first
night. Was that Tuesday Night Music Club?
Yeah, Tuesday Night Music Club. And, you know, I knew Sheryl was a winner, because not only was the music great, but everywhere I took her, everybody said, "Wow, can she come back, or bring her back? We love her," you know. And I knew all we needed was that one song. And Leaving Las Vegas almost was there, but, you know, everything, all I want to do, that was a rocket ship that didn't take long to break out and bust open. And the rest is history for her. When she won Best New Artist and Best Record of the Year, and one other Grammy in 1995, I was one of the A&M people that she thanked at the Grammy Awards, and that made me feel like $1 million too. So it's always good when they do that. And you know,
I was going to say a radio station like WLIR on Long Island must have been like one of your favorites to work with, because they played so much of your product and broke so much music out there.
love those guys and ladies. They were terrific. They were smart, spot on. They were always in front.
Yeah.
And they were super competitive, because, you know, they wanted to play the music first, and they wanted the music first, and they didn't want to hear that, you know, another station in New York City got a record or an artist that they were responsible to, you know, or that they were excited about. You know, they had their pulse on everything. You know, a lot of imports were on there. They had great jocks, and it was wonderful working with them.
I remember, did you see the documentary about their station, the Dare to Be Different
Yeah,
documentary?
I heard about it. I actually haven't connected with it yet. I'd love to.
How some of the labels back then were getting upset because they actually would meet people. They would go to JFK, the radio station, every week and get imports that someone
Mhm.
brought across
Right. Yeah.
from a record store in England. And
Mhm.
it wasn't even decided when it was coming out in America yet, but they had it and they were putting it on the air.
Right. Right. They dared to be different. I mean, clearly, but they were a total professional bunch, a lot of fun to deal with, and we did a lot of live broadcasts with them.
Yeah.
At Father's Place. I mean, that was one of the spots. So
Hmm.
we. I like to believe I was one of their favorite label. A&M was one of their favorite labels because of the repertoire that we had. They certainly were major role with Sting, with Police, Joe Jackson, and Squeeze, and
Yeah.
many others.
Two guys and a mic. Rick Stone is our guest, longtime head of A&M Records and Mark's first boss when he got into the promotion side of the business. Both Rick and I have radio experience. Mark, you never cracked the mic anywhere, did you?
No,
No.
I don't think I was born to do that. I didn't have that great radio voice that I think you have to do it. But I listened to the radio, had a radio. Does that count? But no, I didn't. I think Queens College had a radio station, but it didn't really intrigue me enough to check it out. I was kind of busy checking other things out during my college days, but wasn't radio. But hey, I did like playing records, and I guess that worked out somehow.
Appreciate you liking, subscribing. That helps us keep the channel growing. We're posting new episodes every week, so ring the notification bell so you'll get updated when that's happening. And the comments are on. We'd love to hear back from you. Rick is also a fan of the baseball team you and I despise.
Well, you mentioned Mickey Mantle earlier, and I had to spit
My
up what I
hero.
was drinking. Well, no, I'm sorry.
No. You can't say we despise the team. We don't despise some of the players that have been through there. There's been some legendary players from Mickey Mantle to
Obviously, too many.
Derek Jeter. And
You're jealous of the team. You
Absolutely.
don't
We
despise
have nothing. We have
Yeah, we
nothing.
understand. We understand where that's coming from.
Yeah,
They're
I
running
know.
out of people. The retired.
Jealousy is a normal
Criminals.
human emotion. It's not a good one to display, but
I always say, why
No.
couldn't I be born a Yankee fan? My life would have been so much easier.
we understand.
It's
But
just
Rick and
nice
I-
to win.
Rick and I do root for the New York Giants, so we're football
Yeah,
fans. Of the same team.
unfortunately.
So we have I think by the time this episode is going to be posted, it's going to be the second part of the Subway Series between the Yankees and Mets. I think that's right after the All-Star break.
Yes, it is in July.
Yeah. So
We'll see if the Yankees. We'll see if the Yankees show up this time.
yeah, well, who knows? Rick, when did you let's see. When did you realize you had the biggest hit of your career on your hands? How did you figure that out? Like, what radio stations helped you put somebody way over the top?
Well, I'll determine that based on when I was running the promotion department. Okay, because it's easy for me to say Every Breath You Take, but that was Charlie's song, the Police, and that
I was going to
an
guess that. I was
that
going to
was
guess
an
that one.
instant hit.
Yep.
Okay, I mean, what can you say about that?
Right.
The mailman got that played, as they say in the radio promotion. But for me, it was probably Everything I Do by Bryan Adams, which turned out to be the biggest song of his career. I remember when it came out that broadcasters were calling me, telling me that it's an instant number one. And this is before, this is still the smoke and mirrors kind of thing. There was no sound scan back then, all right, and there was no BDS back then in 1991. So, I always relied on the programmers to tell me what was going on. They knew,
Right.
that the successful ones knew exactly what their audience was saying. That's their job to know, and they knew. So when I was getting calls the first weekend that everything I do was on the radio, I knew that this was going to be an explosion, and it was.
What's the hardest record you ever had to work that did become a hit?
That did become a hit. Fields of Gold by Sting,
I love that
which
song. Beautiful.
which took 7 or 8 months of my life, and probably in real time, and probably 5 years. It's probably the reason why my beard at the time went from natural black to gray. But when I hear that song today, guys, and I hear it, when I'm in stores and I hear it a lot, I'm so proud of the staff and the job that we did in hanging in there, because that was a tough song. Everybody wanted, felt Sting should still be doing this or that, and what is this, and slow with tempo and all the things you hear. That was I'm very proud of that, the job we did on that song, and the fact that it's become what it's become, which is, when Sting does it in concert, and I saw him last October play. When that song came on, the old chill in my back, I still get it, that wow. And first notes of that song, the crowd erupted. They just knew what it was. So that's among the toughest ones that became a hit. That's lasted a long, long time, and it's funny when you look back on songs 30, 40 years from now, even 20 years from now, or maybe 10 years from now, you forget about the charts for a second, and you say, wow, that song was a big hit. Then you look at the chart and it was 21 or 20. But today it's stood the test of time, and it's getting played a lot because it's, the audience made that decision. So that
means a lot. You and I have had this discussion before, like in 20, 30 years from now, how much of today's music's still going to matter? Because it seems so disposable in a lot of ways. Not everything. Not everything, but it doesn't seem like a lot of that stuff from the 70s and 80s and even into the 90s that's still playing 20, 30, 40 years later on radio. Are we, there'll be some, but it's fewer and far between, I guess.
Yeah. When you do my job, it was sure that, I was just doing my job, but there's a certain feeling that I get in seeing that your songs are you stayed the course, number one. You did everything possible to maximize the return, and the audience kicked in finally. And some songs just took forever back then. And I'm proud of the ones that we worked the hardest for, that we had success with. And I'm also proud of the ones that I know we worked the hardest for that maybe didn't make it, but I know that we were there for the artist and we did everything we possibly could. We just didn't connect, or for some reason, there are, as you know, well, our music collections have a lot of great songs that didn't make it.
Yeah.
That's just part of life, unfortunately. I'll give you one other song that was close to me, and that's Aaron Neville had a hit for us in 1991, Everybody Plays the Fool. And,
good song.
Yes, it was a cover of the Main Ingredient hit 19 years earlier. But I was looking back on this the other day. For me to be a part of Aaron Neville having a hit 25 years later than his first standard, Tell It Like It Is, which everybody knows, from 1966, that song went to number 8 in Billboard Pop. It took forever.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's another one. That's a big win for us, And Aaron was a super guy. We all loved him. We had the Neville brothers as artists on A&M. And Aaron did everything we possibly could ask him to do with radio, with the audiences, with fans. He was just a super guy to work with. And we had a big hit with that. Huge hit.
Hey, Rick, off the record, did he ever do a bar mitzvah?
You know that story, right?
I don't know. We should repeat that, but that's a great story.
I'll tell it and keep the innocent innocent.
Okay.
I'm sure Jim would like to hear this one.
Yeah.
So we're in the hunt in radio, at radio for Aaron's song. And there was a Detroit programmer that, you talk about tough, he was right up there among the toughest. And I wanted him to play Aaron Neville, and I felt that it was time for him to do that. You know, other stations that he was networking with were already playing it and were showing signs of success. And I said to him, look, I said, what do I have to do to get Aaron's song on your station? He said, play my kid's bar mitzvah. I said, hold on, I'll call you back. Got off the phone. I called up Aaron's manager. I explained the situation. You know, we looked at the routing. They said, we'll do it.
I love that.
That's a clean hookers and blow story.
The rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah. My old office mate, and when I was at Sirius XM, actually had a baseball cap for all the record label guys when they would come in and visit us, and it said hookers and blow on it. You know who I'm talking about, our friend Kid Kelly.
Of course,
So.
I do.
Rick Stone from A&M Records. I know we'll do this quick. You probably can't get everybody named, but from your time running A&M Records, is there anybody you'd like to shout out here from your team besides Mark?
Yeah, Scott Fink.
Ah, Scotty.
He's our brother. We love
We love
him.
Scott.
He's going to be a future guest.
He's running Hollywood Records. We love Scotty.
Yes.
Okay. You know, look, there's a million others, but I'll let you know, Scotty is super, and he's one of the best out there.
Okay.
I learned from him now.
You learn from him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Scott's the man over at Disney, that's for sure.
Yep.
It's Two Guys and a Mic. Please subscribe. It helps grow the channel. Like and subscribe and comment, and ring the bell for notifications on our next episode, which we're planning another special guest next week, but we don't want to say anything yet. Just make sure it all works out. But want to thank you, Rick, for taking time and sharing some stories.
It's been fun. It's been an honor, and I hope you guys can get a second mic. Okay. Figure it out.
Well, Mark's in charge of that end. He's got the legal department. We're giving away. He says we're giving away a car at some point. He says we're giving away a car. So
we're giving away a car, and we had hair and makeup that we had for everybody today. We have a legal department, and we have some big stars coming on, Rick. But you can proudly tell people you were the first one on this.
I hope I warmed it up for you. Again, thank you.
Certainly did. Hey, and by the way, if I didn't thank you for hiring me, or else it would be just Jim and a mic, I guess.
Don't remind me of that anymore, okay, please? Okay.
Rick, we love you, buddy. Thank you.
We love that. Thank you, guys.